Gaetz, the biggest firebrand inside of the House of Representatives.
You're not taking Matt Gaetz off the board, okay? Because Matt Gaetz is an American patriot and Matt Gaetz is an American hero.
We will not continue to allow the uniparty to run this town without a fight.
I want to thank you, Matt Gaetz, for holding the line.
Matt Gaetz is a courageous man. If we had hundreds of Matt Gaetz in D.C., the country turns around. It's that simple.
He's so tough, he's so strong, he's smart, and he loves this country. Matt Gaetz.
It is the honor of my life to fight alongside each and every one of you. We will save America. It's choose your fighter time. Send in the Firebrands.
What is being done to get the public to really rise up in various states to say to their senators that they want to see the border issue resolved? I mean, you're getting migrants beating up policemen in the streets in New York. You're seeing an influx of migrants all over the country that frankly have people outraged. And couldn't there be some kind of public pressure put in the next couple of days in some of these senator states saying, why are you allowing this to continue? Because at the end of the day, senators have to deal with their voters. And at the same time, in the bill, you give money to Gaza, to civilians in Gaza and Israel. But the border, I mean, we're looking every day at the invasion of migrants, and they're playing a time game with politics on this. Couldn't that pressure put to bear in their home states?
If you were not listening to that, wait, hold on, we got our sound right there, Sasha? It sounds like I'm inside a whale.
Jonah.
Yeah, I got a certain Jonah on the audio.
Yeah, right.
Is that just me, or?
I've got it too.
This has never happened before. We're checking this out. Can you guys hear it? It sounds great, they say, on X.
Yeah. Well, the feeds are amazing. So to everybody listening on this side of the mic, we can see your chats. And
all right, they say we're good. We're just going to roll with it. How about we take these off? We've heard based Reverend Al Sharpton calling the invasion what it is, asking for people to rise up and let their senators know that they've got to have changes on border policy. I could not believe that was Al Sharpton. But now we've got Mayorkas impeachment vote in just moments. We've got this government funding coming due in March, and the Senate border deal has been blown up because of great House conservatives like my guest for this episode, Andy Ogles of Tennessee. Congressman Ogles is in his first term, but he has been in a lot of the major fights to change Washington. A fiscal hawk, kind of came up really as an activist, as a frontline activist in the conservative movement, and now represents some of the great areas kind of outside around the Nashville area. Is that right?
Due south.
All right. Well, it is lovely to have you here. So first, let's just talk about where we are on the Mayorkas impeachment. It's being debated right now, and we've been hearing the discussions in conference. Some folks saying, oh, well, this is just maladministration. It's not actually an impeachable offense. We've heard others lay out the human trafficking, the smuggling, the obstruction, the mistrust, abuse of the public trust. So how would you characterize how that's going on within the Republican conference?
Well, I mean, you heard Al Sharpton, I mean, calling it an invasion. I don't know that I've ever heard Sharpton say anything that I agreed with. And so the fact that you have Al Sharpton saying that we're being invaded that's I rest my case, right? And then so you look at the southern border. So let's say, Matt, you and I, we take one of your amazing listeners, and the three of us would go down to the southern border, and the three of us aid 12 people to come into this country illegally. You know what happens next? All three of our asses go to jail.
That's right.
But Mayorkas aids and abets 8 million people coming into this country, and nothing's happened. It's not only criminal or impeachable, it's criminal, and I would argue it's treasonous. We have terror cells operating in this country. We have Iranian assassins with a hit list that was testified to before Congress operating in this country. And what is this administration doing about it? Nothing. Biden keeps getting lost in the Rose Garden. I mean,
well, it's not by accident. That is, if Mayorkas were just an incompetent dude and the border were open, Like, that would justify the Holman rule, taking his salary to zero, constraining his authorities. But this is a highly competent individual who is executing a tragic and illegal plan against the United States. Now, the Senate had their approach to the border legislation. And, like, what was so funny is there were a lot of discussions with House leadership and more senior members saying, oh, well, like, we're going to get jammed by this Senate bill. This Senate bill is going to be just so overwhelmingly popular that we'll be forced to take things we don't want on maybe Ukraine or deficit spending, but we'll just have to take these border provisions. And when the public found out, it doesn't end catch and release. It doesn't end the unrestricted abuse of parole from the Biden administration. It has this 5,000 person a day trigger, which, by the way, Joe Biden can waive at any point for 45 days. It gives him all this additional emergency authority, $1.4 billion in grants to the open border NGOs. So you'll be funding the invasion too while it's happening, according to those numbers. And, you know, typically the Senate rolls us, man. I mean, I know you're in your freshman term, but I've been here so many years where Mitch will stitch together one of these omnibus bills and we're just forced to take it. And in no time, we blew this thing out of the water. What do you think contributed to that reversal of fortune?
Well, I mean, the name of your show, Firebrand, right? You know, conservatives, we stood up and said, no, hell no. We called it what it was. It was total garbage. And then the American people, I mean, when you've got Al Sharpton talking about an invasion, when you've got the mayor of Chicago or the mayor of New York saying, please close the border. I mean, I don't understand what the Senate was thinking. I mean, they totally misread the tea leaves on this one, not to mention the $60 billion for Ukraine. I mean, that's more money than we gave our Marine Corps last year. Jeez. I mean, this is absurd. You know, the Marine Corps' budget's like $53.8 billion, and we're going to give Ukraine another 60. So we're funding their military, but not our own. I mean, this is absurd. And so to all of you listening, this is why you matter. This is why your voice matters, and it's important for you to engage. And I thank you for that.
So we're moments away from the Mayorkas impeachment vote. I don't know how that vote's going to go. I'm not going to make any prediction. What I can tell you is there has been debate within the Republican conference, and absent unanimity, you always can count on the Democrats to line up behind their guy. Now, maybe there are a few Democrats in some swing seats who want to vote to impeach Mayorkas. We'll see if they have to turn up their head. But here's what I know. However the vote goes, this needed to happen. It should have happened long ago. And if people don't think that Mayorkas has committed impeachable offenses on the border, then that's between them and their district. And I'll let them explain that and deal with that, whether they're Republican or Democrats. But you have a specific proposal that you're going to announce on the program, a kind of concept on how to think about the people who are here illegally. Lay it out for us.
Well, you know, it's called the Send Them Back Act, and I think you and I can agree that, you know, there's 8 million people that have to be deported. And so you have to pick a date. So we picked the beginning of the Biden administration, so that goes back to January 20th, 21. And I would also argue that you've got to go back further in time and begin processing people out of this country. But you've got to start somewhere. You've got to, you know, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So this is an approach where we're going to start deporting people. So it's a fast track approach that if you came into this country illegally under the Biden administration, you would be, quite frankly, eligible, if you will, for expedited removal.
So this would be the biggest deportation in American history ever contemplated.
That's right.
I mean, this is the legislative exoskeleton for what President Trump is talking about in how to remediate what has occurred, because that's kind of the difference between where we are now and 2016, right? In 2016, it was, you know, build the wall, then you got to figure out how to get the criminals out. Now it's like, no. There are millions of people here, even people who like have committed the crime of unlawful entry but haven't reoffended. Those people have to go, according to this.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we can both agree that our immigration process is broken. It needs to be fixed. But that's a separate conversation. That's a separate problem that has its own solution. We have people coming into this country illegally. We are a country of laws. They have to be enforced. And the moment that we give up on the rule of law, then we are lost as a republic. We've got to enforce this. And it's going to be painful. It's going to be ugly. But you talk about Mayorkas being an intelligent individual. I personally believe that he is trying to flood Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona with this new class of voter that the Democrats can get hooked on cell phones and food stamps and welfare, whatever else, so that those 3 states are forever blue. This isn't methodical. This is about stealing our country, and I'm not going to stand for it.
Well, and it's also reapportionment. Like, people think, well, maybe I have a really good supervisor of elections, or I've got a really good attorney general that would never let the illegal aliens vote. At the end of the day, if they're getting counted in the census, which, by the way, they are, then you start to see states like Ohio losing congressional seats, and those congressional seats can reappear in blue states where they've chosen to be sanctuaries and allow all these people to come. So that is a shift in political power that they are trying to achieve through illegal immigration.
That's right.
And it brings us to kind of, thinking about this upcoming budget fight that we have in March. All the talk about the need for a border bill has resulted in House Speaker Johnson and many others concluding that actually Joe Biden could close the border anytime he wanted. Like, all you have to do is reinstitute the Trump policies and don't abuse the parole authority and the asylum authority. And this is like an 8-point plan to solve the problem. Like, do you think the Republican majority needs a bill in the House? Because I worry if we think we have to have an immigration bill, then we're willing to trade something that the America Last crowd wants for it. And at the end of the day, what we actually just need is Joe Biden to secure the border.
Well, you and I both know, your audience knows, he has the power today. You didn't have this problem under Trump. Quite frankly, we didn't have these numbers under Obama. So this isn't an issue of laws. This isn't an issue of a wall. This isn't an issue of a fence. This is a Biden administration that is willfully letting our country be invaded. It's treasonous. I'm sick and tired of this administration. They're screwing the American people, and we've got to continue to fight. And so, yes, he can close the border. And we passed House Bill 2. We had a border security bill. We've done our job. It's roughly 8 months ago, right? And so why do we need to pass something else? Why would we want to trade to get screwed by the Senate?
So you think the position of the House should be H.R. 2? That's our position.
That's right.
There's not some retreat off of that you think achieves it. And what I think reinforces that theory is what our colleague Andy Biggs often says, is that even if H.R. 2 were a law, that will be great when Donald Trump is president, because then a Republican president would have the tools to have expanded removal authority. Basically, what you're proposing in the Send Them Back Act is this expedited removal authority, give a Republican administration the extra tools to do that. But when you're dealing with the lawless Biden administration, what's to stop them from just memoing over H.R. 2? It's like, well, we've got a new interpretation of economic duress that creates this whole new asylum structure.
Well, it's kind of like, talking about the tools that we're trying to equip Trump to have the right tools to do the job that needs to be done. So it's the new year. You made a resolution. You've got all this great workout equipment in your garage. You've got all the tools necessary to be fit and in shape. But if you don't use those tools, if all you're doing is sitting on the couch and eating Doritos, you're not going to make a change. And that's a problem with this administration. They've got the tools they need already on the books, and they're not doing their job.
So
which
what
is
will
why
people think of us if we don't force them to use them?
Well, we got to keep trying, right?
Right. And what do you think is the best leverage point? Because to me, it's the government funding fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
This supplemental,
the power of the purse.
Mitch McConnell just went and executed his own supplemental. He walked Senator Langford off the plank. We've talked extensively about how bad that deal was, but when Mitch McConnell is putting the slug in the back of the head of the bill, that was just that showed that we can win if we force these things to be evaluated separately and sanely. But I don't think that we have to pin our hopes for a secure border on some supplemental. We should say, no, we have a budgeting process. We want to use whatever leverage we have as 1/2 of the government to get them to do what we know and they know would actually achieve the problem. I'll give you the last word on the Send Them Back Act or any other border matter.
Well, again, I just underscore, this is why your governors, it matters who leads. Right? It matters who your governor is. And so kudos to Abbott for taking a stand for Texas. And keep in mind, the Supreme Court ruling said the federal government can take down the wire, but Abbott can keep putting it up. And so we need the states to engage. Look, let's face it. The Congress is a big ship. It turns slowly. Our states are more nimble, and they can help lead the fight, but we need governors like Abbott or Lee or DeSantis or some of these other governors to say, look, enough is enough. We're going to take charge. We're going to stand with Abbott. We're going to send the National Guard. And meanwhile, you and I and others can put forward good pieces of legislation like Send Them Back to start that dialogue and that conversation that this is our country. We get to pick who comes here, and we get to choose who has to leave.
And it seems as though you've selected the order, and it's kind of last in, first out, which not only I think is practically best, it's what's most fair.
That's right.
Great. Andy Ogles, the great state of Tennessee, an awesome firebrand. Thanks for joining me. I want to give you guys a quick look into what went down in the House Weaponization Subcommittee earlier. There was this discussion of the use of AI for censorship. So all that you feared about the pressure that government was putting on big tech to censor, now they're using AI to achieve it at scale. Take a listen.
So, Ms. Richardson, as I understand the National Science Foundation, they take government money and then they dole it out in the form of grants to colleges and universities that then build censorship tools that big tech then relies on so that big tech has an arm's length away from the censorship that's shaping viewpoint. Is that essentially what your reporting concludes?
Essentially, this Track F program, which was through the Convergence Accelerator program, awarded these $750,000 grants to 12 initial projects, and then 6 of these continued on to have an additional $5 million in funding. Most of these are at universities. Some of them are private companies as well developing these tools, but they are all
yeah, and we're gonna. And Mr. Eisen, I guess my question to you, if you're done texting, would be like, is that okay with you? What NSF has done?
Put your microphone, please.
As a veteran of committee staff, I should know better. Mr. Gaetz, I have not had the opportunity to study the report.
Okay, well, let me go through some of the grant requests then. So the MIT...
Might I finish my sentence, please, Mr. Gaetz? If I can just finish the sentence.
No, you were finishing your text earlier. I'm going to finish the question. So,
Mr. Gaetz, just for the record, I was asking for the law that governs that.
Rural communities are uniquely susceptible. I'd ask my time to be restored. Yep. Mr. Eisen, the question is, the MIT grant that said that people in rural communities were particularly susceptible to misinformation. Do you have an opinion on
that? I do have an opinion, Mr. Gaetz. As you know, there are 2 texts that are holy to me because Mr. Gaetz and I have talked before. One is our Torah, our Bible, that I live by. I'm an observant person. That is a holy text to me, and I have the deepest respect, and I have traveled to those places.
I guess the problem, Mr. Eisen,
can I please finish my answers? The other text that is holy to me is the Constitution. In my quick review of this report, those are my 2 holy texts, and I share that with the chairman and others on this. I know that. In my quick review of the report, it appeared to me that a great deal of the evidence related to legitimate sponsorship of scientific and technological research.
Okay, well, let me stop you there, Mr. Eisen, because here's the problem. While you indicate that the Torah and the Constitution are your sacred texts, if Americans indicate online that the Bible and the Constitution are sacred to them, the very grants that are being issued by the NSF would deem those people in a separate and diminished class, where they would be, it is precisely in the
Sir,
MIT...
I have the materials here. No, sir. I would request that the committee release the testimony of Kate Starboard, the University of Washington scientist, the former WNBA player.
But that wasn't this grant. You're talking about a different grant, Mr. Eisen. MIT said that if you're rural, if you're part of a military family, if you view the Bible and the Constitution as sacred, then you're going to be, and you know why they said you're uniquely susceptible to misinformation? Because if you think the Bible and the Constitution are sacred, you might not rely on the expert class, right? You might not rely on all the folks in DC and at all the think tanks, and that's really what people have to rely on. And so when we're taking government money to go and try to harm people who have a particular religious view or a particular view on the Constitution, I would think that in that type of a circumstance, we aren't crying wolf when there's none at the door.
Mr. Gaetz, if we can talk about that material in context, if we can have the full context of the committee's investigation, the ranking member has said there are 29 depositions that this committee has
Mr. Eisen,
taken.
this isn't about any of those. This is about when MIT wanted the grant that Ms. Richardson was just talking about, right? They went and made a presentation to NSF, and they said, here's why you ought to pick MIT in order to do it. And it was to target military families, people in rural communities, people who believed in the Bible and the Constitution. And then guess what? With these AI tools, if you stack that up, maybe you're a person in a rural community who loves both the Bible and the Constitution. Well, then you're really susceptible to misinformation because the expert class thinks better.
No, sir.
Have you seen the movie? Have you seen the movie Minority Report? Have you seen the movie Minority Report? Tom Cruise.
Yes, I have seen that.
Doesn't this kind of feel like that? Yeah. That you're trying to do that it's coming to life before our very eyes because you've got the government funding these predictive analytics to go after Americans. And here's what I think is actually true. It's not that military families and rural Americans and people who love the Bible and Constitution are dumber or uniquely susceptible to anything. It's just they don't think like how the expert class and the National Science Foundation wants them to think. And so they're trying to program what they see so they can control what they behave. And that is the true weaponization this committee will stand against. I yield back.
We are back live, and I still got that problem, Sasha. I'm going to have to take this off. Came back. So we're back live, and the live chat very fired up on the exchange with Norm Eisen. And, it is something when these folks come before our committee, and then they try to have this grand performance when you just want them to answer the question as to whether or not they believe in grants that are used for that type of targeting, and then are they able to defend that. So we'll continue to follow up on the use of AI for this particular censorship goal, and I think we need to legislate to stop it. We also want to bring you, of course, the latest updates from our friends at Quiver Quantitative on stock trading in the United States Congress. This one was one that caught my interest. Senator Tom Carper. Here we go. Here's the tweet from Quiver Quantitative. Just spotted a couple new trades that will be worth keeping an eye on. Senator Thomas Carper just disclosed purchases of stock in Valero Energy and Equestrians Midstream. Carper sits on the Senate Subcommittee on Energy, Natural Resources, and Infrastructure. Isn't it something that the trading in a lot of these cases, not all, but in a lot of these cases, seems to align with some sort of committee assignment? Either it's illegal or just an amazing coincidence. But the winning stock trade, I think this trade netted her over $100,000. Nancy Pelosi, the unusual whale that she is, but Quiver Quantitative gives us this. NVIDIA has now risen 35% since Nancy Pelosi bought call options. She has made hundreds of thousands of dollars in weeks. And then Quiver Quantitative shows the screenshots as to when those call options were placed and then when they were executed on. Hundreds of thousands in weeks for Nancy Pelosi. Very, very impressive stock trader, certainly. Did I mention I think we should pass the Stock Act? Eli Crane, new co-sponsor of the Stock Act. We get more and more folks signing on, so I'm excited about that. We need to continue to get our pressure on lawmakers to sign on these bills to end congressional stock trading. So this was a clip that I saw about financial markets that I wanted to share with everybody. It comes from Barry Sternlicht. He's the CEO of Starwood Capital, and he's talking about the major marketplace, the major asset class of office space, and what it says about people returning to work and how folks who have retirement accounts, who have 401ks, could see an asset class collapse. Take a listen.
I've heard you talk about the balance sheet issue, and we know there's close to $1 trillion of office space coming due. You've said a nice little recession is going to bring people back to these office spaces.
Happened today.
Exactly.
IBM said you have to go back to work.
So, but this is a uniquely U.S. problem, you say.
Well,
now,
we would have a problem in real estate, in every sector of real estate, not just office, because of the 500 basis point increase in rates that was vertical. The fact that one asset class never recovered, people never went back to work in the United States, in the office market has an existential crisis right now. And so, it's a $3 trillion asset class that's probably worth $1.8 trillion. There's $1.2 trillion of losses spread somewhere, and nobody knows exactly where it all is. And Signature Bank was sold, and we bid on it. There were buildings in New York that were $100 million. The guy bought it for $200, the loan was $100, we thought it was worth $30 million. There's a building for sale right now in San Francisco, it was bought for $850 a foot, the loan was $450 a foot, they'll sell it for $250 a foot. I mean, that's 25 cents on the dollar. That would mean we lost 3/4 of the total asset class. Now, this asset class is not just owned by rich people. It's owned by pension plans and other people, small investors. We're not just talking about towers. We're talking about the buildings that surround towns and municipalities. But
what happens to those cities? What happens with
there is a
the
bright
places
spot. The office situation is a completely U.S. phenomenon. I just was in Munich last week, and rents in Munich are up 15%. The vacancy rate in Munich is 2% for Class A. In Seoul, Korea, it's 1%. In Tokyo, it's 4%. Everyone's back to work except for Americans. We've gone off the deep end. We don't show up for work, we don't apply for jobs, and we don't feel like we have to go back to the office.
We are back live, and Debbie on X says that she basically lost her 401k under this administration. And this particular asset class, it's interesting because if you think about it futuristically, you're going to have a ton of these office complexes and office spaces go into economic distress categories. They're going to fall into various types of bankruptcy, depending on whether or not they're spitting off any meaningful cash flow to be preserved and how they're organized. But a lot of them are like singly owned LLCs, and then even the land underneath is a separate LLC. So you're going to have massive collapses in those, and people are going to be able to go buy those distressed assets for pennies on the dollar. And they already have this built-in density, right? Because they're all zoned commercial. And what's happening right now is that rural America is resisting some of the urban sprawl. You're getting some protection of urban spaces. We're under the most massive, of some rural spaces, we're under some of the most massive challenges in terms of need for inventory and housing. People are paying enormous sums for housing. And then you have this distressed asset class with a ton of inventory. So some smart developer is going to figure out how to go buy up these old office buildings where no one's coming back to work. And they're going to turn them into these food hall, living space, urban living areas, and probably make a killing off of it. But we'll be here trying to save America and America's economy while that's happening. Today, I introduced legislation to declare that Donald Trump did not participate in an insurrection. I had a number of co-sponsors to that. We had a big press conference. I want to bring you a couple of the big moments. Take a listen. We are here today to authoritatively express that President Trump did not commit an insurrection, and we believe Congress has a unique role in making that declaration. It's not the job of the states, and especially not the job of some bureaucrats in Colorado, to make this assessment and interfere with the rights of voters to cast their vote for the candidate of their choice. The very experts who often get on television and talk about securing democracy seem to be the first to want to then remove a candidate from the ballot because they are afraid that he is too popular. We have 63 co-sponsors to the resolution that Ms. Stefanik and I will be filing today to express the sense of Congress that President Trump did not commit an insurrection. I want to express my gratitude to Senator Vance for filing the companion legislation over in the Senate. And now is time for members of the House and Senate to show where they stand on this question. We and the former president welcome and expect many more co-sponsors in the coming days and look forward to a floor vote. I spoke with President Trump. He was thrilled at the amount of support from the House of Representatives for this legislation, expressing authoritatively that he did not participate in any sort of insurrection or rebellion. We know that to be the case, but I think that this is an opportunity for all lawmakers to sign on to this bill and to show where they stand. 63 currently, and we expect that number to rise. Actually, it probably already has risen since we started the program, because we had a number of calls coming in with members hearing from their constituents about how they wanted them on the Gaetz resolution, and we welcome everyone to that cause. But I would say probably the best tongue lashing delivered to the media came from Firebrand Eli Crane of Arizona. Eli definitely did not have decaf this morning. Take a listen.
You know what I love about this, watching where President Trump is at in the polls? I love it because it shows the American people don't trust you guys. And they shouldn't, because you guys are full of it and everybody knows it. There's a few honest journalists in this town, but they're very few and far between. You know how I know it wasn't an insurrection? Because he hasn't been charged with insurrection. And we can all see by the lawfare how he's facing up over 700 years in jail right now, how they've tried to destroy this man, destroy his businesses, that if they felt they had an inkling of a chance of convicting President Trump of jaywalking or insurrection, they would absolutely charge him. You know how else I know it's not an insurrection? Because this is the first insurrection in the history of the world where the people that were a part of it were unarmed. It's pretty hard to do if you walk around and see how many individuals are carrying firearms. All right. Last thing I want to say about how I know it's not an insurrection is because I actually listened to the words of the president. If you're trying to stoke an insurrection, you don't tell the people listening, hey, I want you to go over there peacefully and patriotically. All right? This is not an insurrection. What it is a party that's scared to death of this man because he's America first, and he's shown time and time again he's willing to bust up the swamp, and he continues to beat you like a drum. That's what this is really about. And for all you journalists out there, you know, that are pretty cowardly, some in this room right now, you don't have the balls to write the truth. And even if you did, your publishers wouldn't publish it because you're a part of a propaganda outlet, probably one of the biggest in the history of the world. If you had any courage, I want you to ask some questions about that day, January 6th, that we keep talking about. Why has the pipe bomber not been caught yet? Huh? Why has the pipe bomber not been caught? The one individual that could have committed multiple mass casualties has not been caught yet. Go follow some of Beatty's reporting over at Revolver News. He's got some evidence for you guys. What's going on up here with January 6th is there's a pretty big cover-up actually going on up here in Capitol Hill about some of the involvement of our government, and it's quite unsavory. And I want to acknowledge Rep. Massey's work on this lately and others who have been trying to get to the bottom of it. But here's some other questions for you journalists to ask. Why did it take so long for Ray Epps to be charged? Go watch videos of Ray Epps on that day and how he was stoking the entire thing and how long it took him to be charged. And yet there were so many people that were brought into the DC jail, and they're still there to this day. So if you guys want to ask some questions, those are some questions. But the bottom line is we all know President Trump did not commit insurrection, and he's probably going to be the president of the United States once again. And so I'm happy to be a part of this resolution. I'm happy to support the president, and I'm happy to call out all you little cowardly liars in the press. Thank you.
Congressman Eli Crane taking no prisoners there at our press conference as we released our intention to put our thumb on the scale as the United States Congress to declare that Donald Trump did not commit an insurrection. So a quick note about how you consume the program. We want you to be able to always know when we're going live so that you get the news immediately. And the best way to do that is to receive those notifications. Now, to get those notifications right to you when we go live, because as you've seen, it's often different times during the day, whenever we have a quick moment, when there aren't votes, committee meetings, and other work here on Capitol Hill, you want to download the Rumble app. Download the Rumble app and then go to that little bell and turn notifications on. If you do that, you will be part of our crew that is always notified, always first. And Rumble has recently opened a studio here on Capitol Hill. So while we really enjoy doing this from the office, we may be able to bring you a product with a few less glitches, a little better lighting if we're not broadcasting out of the office. So we may do a few over there when we have our guests and want to have a more inclusive conversation. But thank you for everything you've done to make Firebrand a success. We always love when you're able to take just a moment, particularly if you're listening on Apple, give us that 5-star rating, leave a review, let us know what you'd like to discuss. Roll the credits.